What's up, people? I remember to put my headphones in this time. So I was sitting there saying, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. But this should be a really, really good discussion. I have three of the guests that got invited are here. I don't know where the other ones are. I guess they'll show up later. But, hold your questions because you will have the opportunity to ask the panelists your questions and, make your own statements and share, maybe even, call in and share your own story. But I would like to talk to them a little bit first to get, their take on it. And the reason I wanted to do this show is kind of a follow-up to the divestment show that we did a few weeks ago. That is different though, because in this one, I want to talk only about the interracial relationships. And, when you think about it, I know I read some surveyors, I don't know. Anyway, they talked about the increase in interracial marriages in the United States, it like doubled over a 10-year period. The thing is, though, that really Black women haven't really been a part of that much until lately. And, there's still a lot of concerns, a lot of fears. And I thought that we would have a good discussion about it with including males to talk with them about, the pros and the cons and what they see as, some issues that they might still be encountering even in 2021. What kind of things are beneficial or different or unique, what kind of struggles they had to go through. Because, admittedly, I mean, just think about everybody, all the advice letters we get, every relationship has drama, but is there drama that's particular to one between couples that have mixed races? So let me get my panelists on here. And when you guys get on, we're going to let you all introduce yourselves, okay? Yeah, there we go. It took a little minute there. Look at all these attractive people. Go ahead. So let's see. Let's start down here with Brandon, and then we'll go to you, Jordan, and Mikey. You can follow up last. You just give the audience a little bit of information about yourself, and what you do in life and this kind of thing.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to talk about this. This is something near and dear to my heart as I'm the product of an interracial relationship. So anytime these conversations come up, I always, my ears perk up, But my name is Brandon. I currently live in Miami, Florida with my girlfriend who's working on her PhD. She's the reason we're here in Miami. I'm originally from the Midwest, Ohio to be specific. And I work in supply chain for a major defense contractor. And I am an Air Force veteran. I did about 11 years in the Air Force. And I also have my own podcast called Starting Nowhere. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, and everywhere else.
Okay. Welcome, Brandon. And hi, Jordan.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so glad because you were so highly recommended. I'm like, let me find this guy.
Thanks so much. Well, my name is Jordan. I'm from Southern California. And like Brandon, I'm the product of an interracial relationship. My father is Black from Maryland. My mother is from the Philippines. They met in California, had me and my brother. Part of what I do, I'm a videographer, and I do have a YouTube channel here with Jordan where I go around doing street interviews, talking to individuals and couples about the value of relationships. So asking people the deeper, more meaningful questions about our relationships on my YouTube channel. And probably some of the people who watch the videos that I publish also watch your content and recommended me to you. And then also, I just got out of a longer term interracial relationship as well. So I do have a few things that I could add to the discussion.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. All right. And then there's our starlet. Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Mika. I'm 43 years old. I have a degree in environmental biology. I work with wastewater. And I've been married to my husband for 4 years. We've been together for 8 years. And prior to that, I also dated outside my race. And also a lot of people in my family are married interracially. And so I just can relate to it a lot.
Okay. Well, this is a nice, good mix. We'll see what happens if the other people show up or not. But let's get started by talking about what you have observed as far as, how are accepting are people that you've come across of interracial relationships? What's your opinion? Have you, seen more pros, cons, curiosity, ignorance? What kind of things have you experienced?
I guess I'll start for that. Previously, I've dated white women of all races, really, in the past. But this story that I'm going to tell is specific to a white woman I used to date. She had a child, blonde hair, blue-eyed baby, and I was stationed in Georgia at the time, southern Georgia. And so her mom would go to work sometimes, and like any good boyfriend, I would watch the child. And so we'd have to go for gas, we'd have to go to the store, we'd have to do whatever. And they definitely would get some looks, when I'm walking in with this white baby that I'm holding and everything like that. And luckily at that time for me anyways, she was speaking, and so she would talk to me pretty constantly. How kids are when they first start talking, they don't stop talking. And so that was like my saving grace. But if I've even gone out with just friends or white friends, or ironically my own mother who is white, people give me looks, and they constantly think I'm dating my own mother, because it's easier for them to conceptualize that a woman 18 years my senior is dating me than it is for them to go, that's her son. Wow. And so I've definitely gotten a lot of looks being out in public with people who, I'll be honest, it's only with white women. My girlfriend now is not black, but she is my same skin tone, so we get no looks. People just accept that as a reality because we look the same basically to them. So they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Two brown people, that makes sense to us. But I've definitely gotten tons of looks, and my mom is a little bit more confrontational than I am, so she revels in that. So she'll play it up. She'll make it look like we're dating. She'll put her arm around me or something like that, or whatever. Or if she was really in a mood that day, she'll blow people kisses when she catches them staring or whatever. But I would say that there's definitely a lot of curious people who may even make a comment under their breath or something like that, or they'll definitely stare. They're not very shy about it when you're out in public in an interracial relationship. And again, me being from the Midwest and then being stationed in very southern Georgia, I don't know if it's the areas, but it definitely is something that I've seen firsthand. People don't particularly like that much.
Oh, okay. What about you, Jordan?
Well, I have a story from my parents and then also my experience. My parents, my mother being from the Philippines, her father was a little hesitant that the fact that she was marrying a black man, and to the point where he didn't even show up to the wedding.
Wow.
And that was something that, as the years went on, as he saw the character of my father, how my father was a good father to my brother and I, he later he later asked for forgiveness for not showing up to the wedding. So that is something that I knew growing up. And when I was in a relationship interracially, I was dating a Mexican-American young lady, and it was fine. Like, we had no problems. We started dating in college. And so there were a lot of interracial relationships. All of our friends, our friend group, everyone was in an interracial relationship. But there was one day where she mentioned to me how her grandma actually took a little bit of an issue with us dating, but it was more of the language thing. It was less of you're dating someone who's darker skin tone than our family, and it was more of he can't really speak to me in Spanish. But over the years, as we were dating, I learned Spanish more and more, and when I would interact with her grandma, then she warmed up to me a lot more. So it was great.
That's a good point. Okay. We'll get back to that. Okay, young lady.
I live in Ohio, so up here we really don't get too many looks. It's pretty common, I would say. We do a lot of traveling, so sometimes we might, get a comment shouted out here and there while we're traveling, but usually I haven't had any issues. No.
Okay. Well, tell me this, as the solo lady here on the panel, what do you think is holding so many Black women back from being open to love from men of other ethnicities?
I think it's the stereotypes. I think they think that they don't like them, but that's not true. I think all types of men, they love Black women. It doesn't matter what race, and I think they need to just be more open and accepting and maybe more receptive of them coming up to them, because they're not going to approach you like a Black person will. per se. It's going to be a little different,
Oh,
So
interesting.
they sort of have to pick up on the signs, like they might, like they might ask you on a date or just ask more different questions where a Black person might be more aggressive, on how they approach you. So they might not even know if they like them, a lot of times. And then, like I said, they also have to be receptive to talk to them and give them a chance.
Okay, you two guys, do you interact with many Black women to understand, what's going on in that kind of mindset? What might be holding them back?
So I actually had a conversation before I was even recommended to this podcast with one of my friends, and she mentioned how talking about race or explaining her, I guess, social interactions within race in America, like explaining that to a non-Black male was exhausting. And it was something that I guess for her long term, she was just trying to avoid altogether. And that was a conversation that she had with me unprompted. Like I didn't ask her anything about like, what's your interracial dating experience like? That was just something she just started opening up to me about, is that sometimes having these conversations of race and having to explain things to people who may not understand, it can be just exhausting.
I can understand that because it is. What do you say, Brandon?
Well, I have two sisters, so I have Black women that are directly like right there to me all the time that I'm talking with. But I also have obviously past Black partners and many Black female friends and everything like that. And I think what I've observed from both conversations with them and just looking at things is that a lot of times with women in general, of all races at first, they're expected to uphold a lot more than men are. So if you think about, say, sex, for example, women are supposed to be the sexual gatekeepers. And if they're loose with the key, let's say, then they get called names and all this type of stuff, whatever. So then you add an additional component to that of race. And now you add in the additional stereotypes of Black women. And let me be clear, I'm just stating these stereotypes. I'm not saying I agree with them. I don't. But Black women are difficult. Black women have attitudes, blah, 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 whatever, So you add in those things and it makes it a situation where I think for some Black women that I've talked to, they don't want to have to be that strong at home as well. They already have to be so strong out in the world that they want their partner to be the kind of their solace, their peace. And so if you're out there and you're trying to do this stuff with interracially, where you now have to be somebody's sponsorship into understanding Blackness, that can be a lot for people. And if you're already doing that so much in the world, that can be a lot. But I think realistically, what it comes down to a lot of times as, I'm sorry, is it Mika or Micah? I apologize.
Mika.
Mika. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. As Mika was kind of saying before, I think that they're not necessarily approached that way by men of other races and stuff like that. And because of a lot of the courtship culture that we have, women typically are approached, not the approachers. And so they're going to usually find somebody of value in who approaches them. And so if you have different type of women who go out there and they are the approacher, they may be a little bit more open to interracially because they'll approach whoever they are interested in. Whereas a white man who I've had white friends who I know they like a Black girl, I'm, yo, go talk to her. And they're like, nah, I can't do that. They're scared to. And it doesn't make sense. You have the attraction. That person over there probably is of good quality as well because we're in the same place. You know what I mean? So like, just go talk to her. And they have fear around it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, what are these fears? What are they think they're going to get, beat up? What's happening here?
I can't say that I've known anybody personally who thought they were going to get beat up, but
I'm just making a joke.
Yeah, no. I know.
Fears.
I think all men have fear of rejection. And so if you're adding an additional component of where they think Black women aren't going to like them, that's an additional layer of rejection potentially that they're not interested in. You know what I mean? And so they'll just keep away from it. They'll keep away from something that they know they have attraction to, that they're interested in, unless it presents itself naturally. Like say you're just in the common group where you're just hanging out and you can let an attraction kind of develop naturally, which is really the best way to let courtship happen anyways. Then they can go across that line or something like that. But, to be honest with you, too, I think that some people still have those in their stigmas in their family that they're nervous about. Like if they bring a Black girl home or something like that. You know what I mean? Because I know in my past.
Talk about that in a second. Hold that thought.
Yeah, I know.
Because that's going to be a whole separate.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and back off then. You got that.
Okay. What you got to say, Mika?
No, I was just going to say I agree. And then, just also, I think a lot of Black women have been, we're like brainwashed to have a loyalty to the Black community, and they push Black love. And so it sort of makes you like, oh, if I bring someone home of a different race, I'm gonna be judged, by my family. But like I said, for me, it was different because my family has a lot of interracial relationships. So I didn't have that judgment, but I still was brainwashed just from the media and the music, like, oh, we need to have black love, and
Oh,
that's just how it is.
And if I
okay.
may, really quickly, that's kind of what I was talking about with being the protectors. Like Black women have to be the protectors of the culture as well. They can't just be interested in who they want to be interested in. A lot of them feel the pressure of, like you said, Black love and protecting it. And they have to be that, even though Black men can do whatever they want.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What you got to say, Jordan?
Well, I think, a big thing for me that I've seen is like if you see other people in your community dating interracially, you're a little more open to that. But I think the thought was brought up of men of other races may be intimidated to approach Black women. I think to be very honest, some of the observations that I've noticed is men of other races may be intimidated because they have the assumption that Black women prefer Black men. And so some men may feel like in their own self, in their own manhood, even in their own like sexuality, like I may not be able to stack up to what a Black man has to offer or what the Black woman is looking for in a man. And so I do see, like, same as Brandon, like I do have friends who will find a Black woman attractive, but there is that hesitancy. Like they'll use like stereotypes like, oh, I don't have the swag, or, I'm not as endowed as a Black man, or like things like that. And so like, yes, those are stereotypes, but those are things that I have observed other men, non-Black men mention as to why they may be hesitant to approach a Black woman.
Oh, that's very true. I've had a boyfriend say that he just thought he couldn't measure up because he wasn't Black. So that's very true.
Okay, let me just go on record for everyone who's listening. That size stereotype thing is false. Okay, that's not true. So, any man can be anything. That I don't know how that even started, but that's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, my commercial is over. All right, now I want to go back and talk about what Brandon was talking about. What we were talking about the what were you saying? And I said we were going to talk about that a bit, the families and things.
Oh, yeah, about bringing a Black partner home.
Right. Yeah. That. I want to talk about that. Why in 2021 are people still tripping like that? Well, I just don't understand it. I grew up in San Francisco. So all my friends, like even my wedding pictures are like little United Nations with all my friends. And, in my family, we have, some mixed couples. One of my uncles married a Filipino lady, one married Japanese. One of my aunts is married to a white guy. And my cousin is really interesting. She has blue eyes and blonde hair, but brown skin. And it's natural. I mean, everywhere we used to take her, people would stare because it's just so odd looking. But, so being raised up in that environment, I grew up eating everybody's food. They came to my house. They learned about collard greens and, what you call them, sweet potato pies and cobblers and stuff that they never had. Over here we had lumpia and everything. And so this is how I grew up. So to me, that kind of mentality is so limiting in our global, the way that we function now, everything is global. How can people still have that mentality and just be alive? I just don't even understand it. So I wanted to get your take and your experiences.
I can say personally, this has been a long time now. This is like 7th or 8th grade, but I know a girl dumped me and I thought it was just being dumped for whatever. I'm like, cool, whatever. And then I hear later it was because her parents wouldn't let her date a Black boy. You know what I mean? So I think every year we say the same thing. How can this happen in 2021? How can this happen in 1970? Like we're never going to stop feeling that way, I think. But I think it comes down to, if we take race out of it for a second, right? Because I had a conversation with a friend that I went to high school with who actually has his PhD largely studying race as a construct and everything like that. And if we look at race as a social construct, then we can do the same thing with religion, with, even where you're from and all these different types of things. And people see that people have done that across history, like Muslims, and not picking on Muslims specifically, Muslims, Baha'i, Christians, anybody want them to marry people of the same faith. And then you see that for race as well. You see that for all these different things. We try to reinforce, I guess, growing our own culture sometimes. And so sometimes you'll see that people want that. So the parents, Black parents do it, white parents do it. It's a joke now in a lot of like Tyler Perry movies or anything like that. If they bring like a girl home that's white or something like that, like, what you doing bringing this white girl home? You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a lot of people who don't want to say it. They don't want to be proactive about it. But until you bring somebody home, they're like, hey, we haven't said anything about this because we thought you knew. We thought we didn't have to tell you that we didn't really want this in our household. Now, granted, I imagine most of the people on this call, their parents aren't like that. At least I hope not. But there's still a lot of parents I see out there. And like when I went to go meet my girlfriend's parents, you know, I was nervous because I'm always nervous first time I meet a girl's parents if she's not Black. Even if she's Black, you're still nervous because they're parents. But like when they're not Black, that's another component. You have to worry about that too. Like I already have to impress them because they're her parents, but are they going to have a problem with me being Black?
Wow. Did you ever have that problem, Jordan?
I didn't have that problem. And for me, I think, at least in terms of the last interracial relationship I had, it was more along the lines of her parents were very religious people. And because we came from a similar religious background, like that was a point of commonality, that her parents were like, hey, we want our daughter to be with a man who, you know, goes to church or who prays. And because they saw that in me, it wasn't like her father and I had a conversation just like man to man, and it wasn't an issue at all. And he was actually very helpful when we would go to functions that were like specifically like Mexican functions with everyone speaking Spanish, very cultural functions. Like he would be like helping me, introducing me to people and just kind of explaining things that went on. And so that was very helpful. But I think in terms of bringing in someone from a different race into your family circle or into your social circle, into your friend group, I think one of the things that we think about is, can this person hang? Like, can this person hang with us? Do they have like similar interests? You know, and yes, race and culture play a huge role in that. At the end of the day, like we don't want to, even though we may have thoughts that are that can be prejudiced, we don't like speaking them out loud. But I think at the end of the day, we want to know, like, hey, can my friend or my family member bring this person around, and can they like hang with whatever we have going on? Can they fit in our dynamic easily?
Gotcha. Good insights. Okay, Mika.
Well, the one guy I dated, I never really met his parents because he was from another country and they had came over here. He was like Italian and Croatian, and they came over here as refugees like back in the early 2000s. So his parents didn't even really speak a lot of English. And I don't know, he just was like really skittish about me like meeting his parents. I mean, we were together a couple years, but it didn't work out. But I'm just like, I don't know, it was just really weird. You know, I sort of knew it wasn't going to work out because of that. But like, he had no issue at my house because my family was more accepting of that, you know. But
Right.
I never like hung out like with his family and stuff like that. No. But like with my husband, it wasn't like that. His family was very accepting. They loved me from day one. I didn't have any issue with his family. So
Yeah.
it just depends, you know.
He sounds like a great guy.
It depends on their culture, you know. It depends on a lot of things. So when you meet someone, you know, of a different race, you have to take all those things into consideration, you know, because some won't accept you. I mean, I even know a woman who, she was Egyptian and she married a Muslim guy, and his family did not accept her at all, and they had to get a divorce. So it was like, you know, with some cultures, they're like, no, you cannot bring this person home. So,
You know, the worst thing I saw happen, my older brother, I think, was he in high school still? I think he was in about in the 12th grade, and went out with this little Jewish girl, and he brought her to the house, and we met her and stuff. She was fine. But her parent, when he came to her house, Do you know her parents were so upset they sent that girl off to Jerusalem?
I
They
believe.
put her little butt on a plane and sent her to her grandparents to get her away from my brother. It was some amazing stuff. And I'm like, what happened to them, to what's her face? And he was like, oh, I didn't tell you. Let me tell you what happened. That's how serious they were. Okay,
Yeah.
you guys, I'm going to put this is the link to call in and share your story, or if you have a question for our panelists, we'll start taking those. But right now, if you have something that you'd like to share, use that link, and then we can take your call to the panelists, your questions to the panelists, or you can share your story, either one. Shay, you can copy that and post it up so everybody can see it. All right. Let me ask you this question. What do you think are the benefits to dating interracially? Are there any particular benefits that you can think of? We'll get into the cons a little bit more in a minute, because I think we know what those are. But I'm just trying to see, has it enriched your life? Has it made you gain anything? What kind of benefits do you perceive that you've been? How have you benefited?
Yeah, right off the bat, I would say just diving in and learning about another culture. Like, even if stuff doesn't work out between like you all as individuals, just learning about a different culture, perhaps learning another language or growing in your proficiency in another language. For me, like, I picked up Spanish I'm pretty hard on myself, so I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but you could drop me off in any Spanish-speaking country and I can get by. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, like, I wanted to communicate with the family members of my significant other at the time. And so, and then also just learning about just traditions and just all the food as well. Like, I'm someone who also grew up with lumpia at the table, right? I remember I described it as, we would have like cornbread, chili, collard greens at one meal, and the next meal we had like rice and fish and like chicken adobo, right? Like that was my existence growing up as a Black Filipino person. But then when I step into this family and this culture where, we're eating tacos and, we're having like carne asada all the time, and it's just a whole different experience, and that enriched my life. And even though we're not together now, like, that's still something like I carry on with me, and it's definitely enriched my knowledge of the world.
Okay, what do you think, Mika?
To piggyback on that, yes. We do a lot of things that a lot of Black people don't normally do. So, like, we have kayaks, we go kayaking, we go camping, we go hiking, we go to national parks. Like, we do like a lot of different activities and vacations. And every time I'm out there, it's like, I barely see, it might be a few Black people sprinkled here and there. And it's like, you give them the look like, hey, but, other than that, it's like, definitely more experiences. I feel like I live life more to the fullest because he gets me out there. He's like, okay, let's go do this weekend. Let's go do that. It's like we're always doing something. And I don't know, it just seems, like I said, that it's just different activities that most Black folks don't normally do
Right.
that I get involved in. And
okay, so you've been expanded in that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I tell you, this woman, did she ever stop smiling? She just be grinning every time I see her. She just, it's so cute though. I like seeing her. She's just happy, and I enjoy that. So, what's your take on it, Brandon?
I think when it comes to benefits, one of the things is you kind of get to, in a weird way, experience your race as an outsider sometimes, because there's conversations you'll have with your partner that you wouldn't have with a person of that race that you just walk by on the street, or maybe even a close friend or something like that, because they're just not that comfortable. But with your partner, they can say certain things or observe your behaviors or things you say or things like that from a different perspective. And so you get to kind of see it from that other person's eyes, but without a judgmental tone to it. And so sometimes it's really cool to see how they view different things, and you get to do the same thing for them, of course. And obviously, like what Jordan and Mika were saying, both, if you have I don't think it works if you're dating like an American white person, because we kind of basically get that culture. You know what I mean? It's not really that different. But it, like, for example, my girlfriend's Persian. So, and her parents are directly from Iran. So I've learned a lot about one thing. Everybody out there who hasn't tried it, go try Persian food. You know, I've had the benefit of trying tons of Filipino food, love lumpia, love chicken adobo, love like all that stuff. Pancet's my favorite, but but like definitely go try Persian food. Like I had never had Persian food before. One of the first times I went to meet her parents was a holiday they have, Persian New Year, Nowruz. And her mom's an amazing cook and just made all this food. And I got to just really dive into all that and everything, you know what I mean? But I think it's just really interesting to have that close connection with somebody who is fundamentally different from you, because I think that you're always going to be different as different people. But when you have that racial component, which is one of the the largest way that we identify ourselves, I think it really teaches you a lot about your own identity, and then also how you can associate with other people and not get too lost in your own identity.
Okay, those are all great answers. Okay, I posted the link in there. So if you have a comment that you want to make on the air, just use that link and you can access the studio and ask your question. Okay. So when we think about this, that you two gentlemen are the product of an interracial relationship, was that hard for you growing up? Did you have any particular problems with being accepted, or were there like particular, races of people that gave you a problem, or was it generally okay? You think it was easier for you as a male than it might be for a female?
I'm not sure about Jordan, but I'm the oldest, so I was the first one, to come on scene and everything. And I'm going to be honest. I'm blessed with how my mother dealt with things, because I've heard of stories from other mixed children, and they did not handle it the way that my mom did. So, for example, my grandfather still said colored up until I don't remember when it was. And we didn't see him for like 5 years. She stopped taking us around him. She wouldn't take us around her own father. She wouldn't see him because he couldn't change his ways and wouldn't behave correctly around us. And she wasn't putting up with it. She would only take us to black churches because she didn't want us to deal with the racism she felt like was prevalent at white churches that she had taken to. So she changed her life to fit us instead of trying to make us fit in a world that she was accustomed to or something like that. Right. Because
bravo.
She did. She did what I feel like mothers are supposed to do, which is protect their children, right? Unlike a lot of, for example, a very famous case of that is the rapper Logic, who, for those who don't know, is actually mixed, even though he presents as white. And his mother would call him the N-word. She was taking him around all these racist people, do all this crazy stuff. So, my experience with that is my mother always protected me in that. She was defiant to what people thought we should be. She got mad when people didn't accept that we were her children. I remember one time in particular, somebody asked if I was a neighbor's kid. And I thought she was going to fight that people, because my mom does fight people. I think
savage.
yeah. She used to be. She found Jesus now. She good. But I think for me, the thing that it really shaped and it can pretty much put my whole identity together is I came out the womb and noticed how people would treat me when I was with my father or compared to when I was with my mother, and then try to tell me there was something different about me and my mother. You know what I mean? And so immediately I was able to kind of look at that and go, that doesn't make sense. This is literally the woman who carried me for 9 months and everything like that. And you're trying to tell me we're not blood because our skin is in the same tone. And so it made me question things from a very young age. And I never stopped questioning things. It kind of shaped my whole personality that way. And it had a negative effect on the other side, too. For many years, I didn't feel comfortable dating Black women because I was supposed to date Black women. There was a white lady who told me that when I was young, who I had a crush on some little white girl that I was in class with. And she's like, oh, so when are you going to go back to your own? And that made me, yeah, I know. That made me defiant. And then because of that, it soured my own relationship with Black women. I didn't feel comfortable dating Black women because it felt like I was supposed to. And I was doing exactly what these racist people wanted me to do, by doing that. Now, I've gotten past that and developed my own appreciation for Black love and everything else, of course. But I say that's how being mixed shaped my early years and my upbringing because of those type of experiences I had.
Okay. Wow, oh my goodness. Who would say something like that to a child? Okay. Okay, Jordan, what about you?
Yeah. It lagged a little bit for me. Yeah. So my parents were very intentional. Yeah. My parents were very intentional raising my brother and I. We grew up in a small community of like 3, 4 other families, and all of us children were biracial. And so I was one of the younger kids, so I just grew up in an environment where it was normal. Like I never had an identity crisis, never thought it was weird to be biracial at all. And all of us kids who grew up together, like all of us excelled academically. All of us like had strong social circles individually. All of us were very like athletic and just excelled at everything we did. And so for me, it was just kind of like this push to excel and just be excellent at everything I did, because there were other kids around me who looked like me, who came from very similar backgrounds as me, who were just excelling in life. And so that's something that we always pushed each other to do. And so I know that my experience growing up is different than other biracial or multiracial kids in the U.S. But I mean, I can only speak to my experience.
Right.
Also, my parents were very intentional about like teaching us about our family, both my Filipino side and my Black side. I've been to the Philippines 4 times, and just getting to experience that side of my culture, visiting my cousins, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles there in the Philippines. Even though I don't speak Tagalog, I just know like a very few words. Just being able to experience that side of my heritage is really cool. And then my dad also growing up was really intentional about like teaching me about like Black excellence. Like these are some Black doctors throughout history. These are like Black intellectuals. Like sit down, read this book, learn about this history. Even like small children's books that I would read growing up. And so I grew up just understanding that I came from excellence, and that was something that just like pushed me to like never question like who I was or what I could become. It was already like ingrained within me because of what my parents had done, setting up like the social circles we were a part of, and just seeing the example that my brother and other kids like me set.
Oh, your parents were on it. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. What about you, Micah? Mika? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know why I keep wanting to call you that.
Well, my family actually has a pretty complex history. They were my great grandparents were the product of the slave and the slave master. And because they were biracial and they were the son and daughter of the slave owner, they were allowed to get married, and he gave them land. So they were allowed to get married and they gave them land. And we have land down in Alabama because of that. And then at that point, they had children. And because they were biracial, um, most of the children came out with blonde hair and blue eyes, like your friend. And then my grandmother, she came out with like red hair and brown eyes. And then half of the family, because of the time period that it was, some of them went off and married white folks because they could pass for white.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just easier for them. And some of them went off and married Black folks. So when I go to that family reunion on that side of the family, it's like, yeah, like I think I was like the darkest one there. I'm not just like brown, but it's like brown, and my son is even darker than me, all the way up to very, very light to where they pass for white.
Wow.
So that's just on one side of the family. And then my grandfather, he actually had divorced my grandmother and married a white woman. And so she was, I went to visit them, and, she had children, and I was around them. I was raised into the suburban area, and I just been around, just like I said, biracial people all my life pretty much. So
That's
it never
great.
was really anything different for me, it's like, it's family. So.
Okay. Well, you guys all have very interesting stories. So let's get a couple of our calls going here. Tracy?
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
So I just wanted to call in and share some of my thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on the topic. I'm married to a white man, and I've interracially dated for years and years and years, like probably about 20 years. I had my first boyfriend at 14. And you asked about the benefits, and I wanted to name one that hadn't been said, because everybody said some really great benefits. But one of the benefits to Black women, particularly in interracial dating, is sheer numbers. Like, it's a sheer numbers game. When you think about the fact that we're only, Black women are maybe 6% and Black men are 6%, and you take that 6% of Black men and you whittle it down to what's available, like the ones who are, who aren't dusty, the ones who are single, the ones who may be attracted to any particular Black person, Black woman, when you whittle that 6% down to that number, to, who's available, it's a small amount versus, I was just saying to my husband, like, white men are like the number one, like the most men in the country. You have a larger pool of people to date. And I remember you saying years ago that you had a friend who basically, a black female friend who basically went to Europe, and she found her husband because the guys there were just like so excited about her and everything. And I realized, like I think it's a great idea for Black women to travel and go to Europe. We all should, but also we might not even have to go that far, because my husband and I were vacationing in New England, and New England's very progressive, very white, but there were some Black women. Every single Black woman that we saw, and it was at least like 30 or 40, every single solitary one who was not at work was holding hands with and in a relationship with a white man. It was incredible. I mean, it made me realize, like, anywhere where white men, where there's a lot of them and they're not brainwashed to think that whatever country singer is the hottest woman in the world and that they need to be with a white woman, anywhere where you have a lot of progressive white dudes, you can literally go and have your pick, apparently. And so I think that one of the benefits for us is it's just a numbers game, and there's more of them out there. There's more men available to us when we expand and when we look for different ethnicities.
Okay, those are excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see what Diamond has to say. Diamond Princess, you can unmute your mic and share your thoughts.
Hi.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, so I used to date a non-Black boy back in high school. We were both freshmen at the time.
You have a lot of background noise. Can you get somewhere quieter?
Oh, yes, sorry. Sure, give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm on the wall. 1 second.
That's what everyone, if you guys are going to call in, please make sure you're in a quiet environment, because all that noise goes onto the recording. Let's see. Let me get Lana in here. Lana, you have something
Hi,
to add to
Deborah.
the discussion? Hello, lady. Uh-oh, her mic got muted. Oh, there you
Can
are.
you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Hello.
Your mic was muted again. Hello.
Okay. How am I doing now? Good?
Yeah, you're fine.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I just wanted to thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on. And oh my gosh, I can relate to so much. And I'm someone who has dated interracially exclusively my whole life. And, I agree with some of the things that your last caller, Tracy, was saying about the benefits, but I also want to just say, I guess someone who's a veteran at this and who's, I wrote you the letter. I told you about my first kiss experience and how crazy that was. And basically what happened to the people in the audience, my first kiss was with a guy who I really fancied. He was white. And the next day after he kissed me, he freaked out and was just like, I want my kids to look like me. I had no idea that, because I told him I was a virgin. He assumed that I wasn't. And he said some really interesting things. And at this time we were going to a religious college together. And he basically was just like, oh, I thought a girl like you had done everything. You're fit, you're very attractive. I had no idea. And the way he was acting was as if I had like pulled one over on him. It was so crazy. But I really want to highlight that we have to vet everyone, whether you're a guy or a girl, or a guy or a lady, black or white or whatever. We have to vet everyone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma out there. And I think that's why a lot of people are like not integrating still in the 21st century. There's still all these things holding people back. And a lot of my issues came, I was in religious circles trying to date, and I didn't have success in those circles. And a lot of it was just because of religion and just like the stigmas and the ideas that people had about Black people. It didn't matter that I was in the church, didn't matter that I was attractive, came from a middle-class family and was just doing all the right things. People still had these wild ideas. But I will add that I came into much success dating men from abroad. And I do want to say that. And I live in California, so I'm like over in Los Angeles. So, it's a whole melting pot over here. It's a whole scene. And I found that I didn't have the level of struggles that I did, unfortunately, with American men. And I don't say that to be disparaging. I just found that I came into so many struggles and challenges with non-Black men who were American. But it was the international men who were taking me to meet their moms, their sisters, their brothers, just they were really excited about me. And it was a really different experience. And I found that while there may be racism with people from abroad, I haven't experienced it yet. I'm sure it's there. But what I came across mostly was, what kind of family does she come from? More like class and status type stuff. So there are things that are there, but it's kind of different. But I never want women or guys to go into it thinking that it's going to be a fantasy, because there are struggles. There are very real challenges. And I think people should vet everyone and keep their eyes open.
Okay. Those are great comments. Let me turn back to my panelists. And she mentioned, some of the struggles, and we hit on a few of those things. But what do you think are the particular struggles for women who are getting into an interracial relationship?
I think she definitely touched on a major one there, which is a common theme is that Black women are fast. You know what I mean? Like that goes back to Jim Crow. That goes back to all the stuff or whatever. If you look at even with just Black people in general, they talk about how we basically make sex just white people or whoever wants sex and everything like that. And so that anytime somebody's looking at you in a fetishized way, instead of looking at you as a human being with, emotions, and I like this person because of X characteristic, then you're going to run into those struggles. And that's what part of what you see is when somebody says they like Black people. I'm like, how you like Black people? Like that is, we're not the same. We're not monolithic. You know what I mean? There's differences. You have 4 different Black experiences right here on this call. So you can't come in here and say you like Black people. You maybe like Black culture. Maybe you have an idea of what Black people are. And that's what you're really coming down to. So I think that's one of the primary struggles is, are you dating Brandon? Or are you dating a Black man? You know what I mean? Like that's the problem that I've seen before, where it's almost like they're doing me a favor by being open to dating a Black person. And I think that exists so much more for women, because again, it's the same thing. Like, I'm going to say something again that I've heard people say. I don't want to just attribute it to me. Don't be putting this on my page. But
that caveat in there.
Yeah. But it's like if a girl is anything other than like a 10, 10, 10, 10, Beyonce, Rihanna type thing or whatever, like dudes almost act like they're doing a favor by being attracted to you. You know what I'm saying? And I think that happens with Black women all the time. Like the common phrase that people say, oh, you're pretty for a dark girl. Like that type of stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, boy. Okay. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Brandon had to say.
Do you have any sisters?
Do I? No, I don't. It's just my brother and I. Yeah. Okay. I also want to add on, for women in particular, I think stepping into another culture, sometimes in certain cultures, there is an expectation of the woman in the culture to fulfill. And I do think that American women now are priding themselves more on like independence and going after their own. Whereas there's some cultures you do step into where they expect the woman to take on a more domestic role. And I have seen one friend in particular struggle with that with her in-laws, to say like, hey, no, I'm not going to be at the home, like making food and taking care of the kids 24/7. Like that's not the role I'm going to play. And so I do think for women stepping into an interracial or intercultural relationship, that is a struggle that may arise.
Good point. What about you?
I don't know. I can't really think of too many struggles. Just I guess well, for me, I was raised middle class, and the school I went to was very mixed. We had all different types of races of people, so I was accustomed to being around different types of people. But I would say, if you're not used to being around different types of people, you need to get out more and just open up your horizons and get into areas where you can experience different cultures and see how, different people act and things like that. I think.
Yeah, I agree. So I remember when I moved down to Houston, coming from San Francisco, man, I was not ready. I was not ready. I was so not ready. And, just looking for, I was looking for Chinese food. I'm like, okay, I want to have some Sichuan food or some Hunan, some spicy and stuff. And they're like, it's Chinese food. It's all the same. I was like, oh, no, the different provinces and all, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm a real foodie in case you guys haven't noticed. And so they were like, well, why would you want to eat that anyway? Because you don't even know what that is. It could be dog. And I heard that from so many different people. I was not ready for the closed mind. So if you have, what you just said just made me reflect on that. Those people would not be ready for an interracial relationship because they're too closed-minded.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Diamond, are you in a quiet area now?
Yeah.
Oops. You are? Okay. So what was your comment?
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, I was going out with a boy that he was mixed with white and Asian, and he was telling me his mom was Vietnamese and he liked the Black girls. And he really had a crush on me. So we started to, seeing each other. So when we got back to school the following week, he told his mom about me. And when he told his mom that I was Black, his mom went off on him, like for no reason at all. So I was kind of like in shock to be like 14 years old because I'm like, I never went through that before, like with someone just going, off because they're dating somebody from another race. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
So I know that made him feel horrible. Poor kid.
Yeah. So
okay,
thank you.
That's pretty bad. But you know what I've noticed now? I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I've noticed this around here in California. Okay, so like the white guys, some of the stuff that Brandon was saying, how they're, afraid to approach and they think they're going to be rejected and all stuff. It's like that there when they're younger. So they go and they get with the women who they were, quote, supposed to be with. But by the time they make it to marriage number 2 and they're like in their 40s or whatever, then here they are. They're like much more comfortable with themselves, I think more confident. And then you'll start seeing them dating interracially, like pretty much every woman that they get with and the ones that they marry are not white. So am I the only one who's noticed that? You guys noticed that?
I was going to say, with men, I believe that's true. With women, I think sometimes the opposite ends up being true, at least again, in my experience, where they won't settle down with somebody outside the race. They'll date. You'll have fun. You might even get to a full year or something like that. They might even put you up on the Facebook status or something, but they're not going to make it a real relationship. They're not really going to like take it to the next step. And that's again, I think from parental pressure and what it sounds like from what you're talking about there as well. In your 40s is when you start to really get out of that parental pressure. You don't feel like you have to live up to what your parents want to anymore. So for those men, they may be like finally getting to a place where they're comfortable with themselves, but also they can feel more defiant, I guess, for their parents and everything. And they go for what they truly have wanted all these years.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what has happened. Oh, what happened to Mika?
Oh, right.
I'm
and
here.
if I could
I'm gonna pick it up for a second.
if I could just add on to that, I think it doesn't just apply to people who are going into a second marriage, but I think people who just get to a point where they are comfortable with themselves, where they've taken the time to like develop within themselves, know who they are, and really get to a point of maturity where you just stop caring about certain outside opinions, that people like that are more likely to be very comfortable entering into an interracial relationship or entering into any relationship really that maybe others in their family or peers of theirs don't necessarily approve of.
Okay. You know, one thing that I think a lot of people worry about is that, and this actually happens. How do you handle if the person that you're with has racist friends that like to call you names? I was reading advice letter. It wasn't on my column. I think it was to, I don't know, the little rat face woman. I can't remember her name right now. This was years ago. And this black lady was married to a white guy, and his friends would come over and they would call her the N-word when they were referring to her. And she was upset because her husband didn't do anything. He just, he never shut it down. And so, to me, it just felt like by him not saying anything to his friends that it was, he was encouraging it. He was okay. So I wanted to ask if any of you have had any kind of experience like that, where family member or a friend has referred to you with a racial slur that you are aware of. And how did you handle it, if so?
Well, first I'm gonna say I am my husband's second wife. So he was married to a white woman before, but she passed away. She had cancer. So I am his second wife. So, second wife, happy life.
There you go.
But I will say that we don't have friends like that. My husband doesn't keep friends like that. So if somebody was like that, they would not be our friend. And it has been a time where, like I said, we've been kayaking on a river, and somebody yelled out some racial slurs off the side of the bank, and he was ready to go back and beat them people up. And I'm like, no, don't do anything, because we're on, just let it go or whatever. But when people do that, it really gets him mad, and he's ready to hurt someone, so
throw bows.
yeah. I'm like, don't do it. It's more of them than us. No, don't do it. We'll just let it go this time, because Ohio is a red state, so it does have very racist areas. And I've been in areas where it has been racist. So I wouldn't say it's expected, but it can happen.
Okay. I'm about to shoot you two gentlemen.
I would say that's a non-starter for me right there. Like, if you're keeping those people around you, we're never going to go anywhere. We can't be like, how am I going to talk to you about black issues if you've got a friend who's doing that? First of all, I wouldn't have said nothing to her. I'd have looked at her and see what she did. And then on my own, at that point, I do like I do any other time somebody says the N-word. We have problems, especially if we're in my house. Oh, no, that's a non-starter. We all have all kinds of issues. So, sorry, that upset me. Anyways, the point for me is that, and this is kind of where I wanted to get to at some point in this conversation anyways, is that if you're in an interracial relationship, you're not in an interracial relationship. You're a black person in that relationship. You need to be black in that relationship. You can't just be there and identify as interracial. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm in a relationship, like my girl, we're talking about black things because I'm black. Like, there's no way I'm not me. You know what I mean? Like, so that's part of the whole thing. So if I'm in a relationship and that person has a friend and they're like cool with, one, I better not ever see that person again. Two, you better not ever see that person again, or you won't see this person again. That's it. Like, I don't even understand how you can contemplate staying with somebody like that if they have people who hate your existence.
I'm with you. I don't know, but she was unfortunately married to the guy before the way she made it sound, they were married, and then they moved to the area where he grew up, and that's when she was around these friends, because before they lived somewhere else, so she was just shocked at the response.
I don't know if this came to pass in this situation, but I try to keep it away from mansplaining anything to women. But the one thing I will say for all women everywhere, I told this to my sisters, I make sure my girlfriend herself does it. You know what I mean? Always have your own money, because that's exactly how you get caught up in situations like that. Because I'm assuming here, but she couldn't leave because they moved somewhere and she doesn't know anybody. She doesn't have money and everything like that. So like, how can you go? Like, always have your own money. That's the number one thing I could say in every relationship. If you don't want to work, I'm not telling you to work, but I'm saying always have your own money. Never be completely reliant so you can't get away from a situation like that if it pops up.
I'm with you. What about you, Jordan? You had any issues like that, or heard of any?
I've never had an issue like that, and I've never heard of a peer family member of mine having an issue like that. But I do think, there's this quote I've heard, and I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to try anyway. It says, like, show me who your friends are and I can show you who you are, or I'll know who you are. And, if someone has friends who are like that and they're not standing up for you, or they're not like, checking their friends right away or checking their family members, then that says a lot about like who the person you're with is. And so, for me, that's like immediate red flag.
Yeah, that would be immediate termination. That's what I mean. I don't even want somebody of, my same race calling me names. So, if it were somebody else, man, I'd have to show my hood rat side, and that wouldn't be pretty. I'm trying to be like all ladylike and stuff. But let's see. Oh, Tracy's back. Tracy, you got another comment?
I'm like watching like the greatest like sports game, and I'm not even into sports of the year, because I'm like, yes. And when he said that, yes. And when she said that, yes. I'm like cheering. Oh my gosh, you guys are saying such amazing stuff. I don't even remember what the question is. Oh yeah, about.
Tracy is crazy, by the way. She's been a fan of mine for like forever.
Yeah, I am like Miss Heartbeat #1 fan. Well, you know what? I had oh my God, this dude was so dusty. This dude, years ago, I dated this guy, and he had told me his dad had called me the N-word, like, like, and we were, I was on my way out of that relationship, but he had said it. His father had said that I was N-word minded, like, and N-word minded. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, how? Like, what does that mean? And he was like, oh, because he said that because you watch all those shows on UPN. That's what he said. That's what he said. Yeah, about a month or so later, I was done with that fool. But I mean, I think like with what I've noted. Oh, and another, you know what? Let me tell this story real quick. Another one. I was actually just telling my husband this one today when we were talking about the show. I had this friend. Now he and I, we were just like platonic friends, like Miss Heartbeat and Ken. We were just like platonic friends. Nothing was going on with us. And he had a girlfriend. Her name was Amanda. And he was cheating on her with everybody except me. Like, he was dusty, but he was my friend. And one night, like, we were hanging out, and and Amanda was at work, and he had to get something from his house. So we pull up to his house. He had lived with his parents at the time. And I'm like, I'll wait here. He's like, no, come on in. So I came in. And the first thing, like, she takes a look at this, like, black girl, and the first thing she says is, where's Amanda? And so he's like, oh, she's at work. She's, everything's fine. And so, I come in, where's Amanda? Where's Amanda? And so, he's like, he's fine. We're fine. Everything, this is my friend Tracy. Like, and so I tried, talking to her while he was grabbing whatever he needed. And like literally in the middle of our conversation, like she kept asking, like she was freaking out. Like this woman was freaking out at not even the idea, like not even he and I weren't dating or anything, but just the idea that her son was going to be with, like in her mind, the idea that her son could possibly be dating, talking to a Black girl freaked her out that much. And and I was saying today, I was like, can you imagine, like, had I been with my friend, had I dated my friend, I would have had that for my boyfriend's mother or for my mother-in-law. That's the person who I would have had.
Wow, that is so sad. Thanks, Trace.
Sure.
I want to start taking some questions now. If you guys have a question, please put, my name sort of highlight or whatever it's supposed to do so to get my attention. And then I will post it on the screen for the panelists to address. No, Paula, I'm looking at this question here. Unless he walks in and introduces her as somebody like that, she shouldn't make assumptions because people have friends. So, and her approach, whether it was his friend or whoever it was, a classmate, anything, there's no reason to keep saying it if the kid answered one time. And it's not her business who he's dating and who he brings in the house. That's just ridiculous. Where's Amanda? Where's Amanda? That's stupid behavior.
And I think that's one of the things you're touching on there, Deborah. At least it sounds like it to me, is that I imagine everybody on this call and anybody who's ever been non-white in white spaces, there's overt racism and then there's perceived racism. And it seems in those situations, those are the type of things where like the reaction to what's happening here isn't adding up to what's actually going on. And that's where you start to get that in the back of your head. You're like, is this because I'm Black? Like what's going on here? And so those are the type of things you're talking about. Like, because it just doesn't make sense otherwise in that situation to react that way. It's out of bounds reaction to what's actually going on. And that's where you start to see those type of things, whether it's prejudice or whatever going on.
Yep. They call them microaggressions. It has a word now, but that's exactly what that is. So, that is totally, I'm glad you explained it better because I just, it's just no kind of parent would react that way. That's just an abnormal reaction. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, they're asking now about marital status. So everybody except for Mikas single, right?
No.
No. You're married?
No. I mean, like tax status single, yes, but I'm in a long-term relationship, so I'm not single.
Tax status single. I like that. I'm tax status single. I'm gonna start using that.
That just sounds like something a dude would say to cheat.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, we have questions. Anyone have a question? It is racist, Paula. If your son walks in with a woman, it's not your business who the woman is. I mean, see, that's ridiculous. He don't know who the woman is. It could be somebody from his class. Oh man, I wish my parents would have asked me something like that. I'm walking in with somebody. Okay, let's do this question here. What did you got? What's your take on that? Anybody have a?
It happens. It happens. I mean, that's why, like the other caller said, you have to vet people. So, just because someone is of a different race doesn't mean they're not a bad person or, I mean, you have good and bad people of all races. So, look at Halle Berry. Okay, she married that guy and she's paying like all this child support and alimony to him. And, so it happens. He was a white guy. So yes, if you have a good job, you have a pension, you have a house, you really need to be careful of who you're allowing in your space. And just make sure you vet the person very well and get to know them, before you let them know everything about you, I mean, they shouldn't even know where you live for at least the first couple of months. I never let anyone know where I live until we were dating for a few months. And then, They shouldn't even know you have kids, as far as I'm concerned, unless you've been dating for a while. They shouldn't even meet the kids because you need to do background checks. You need to know who you're dealing
I
with.
know these people. That's
And
kind of
sometimes they
weird. Some of
target
them.
single mothers for the kids for the purpose of hurting the children. So you really have to be careful. Don't try and hurry up and do family things all right away. No, send the kids to a babysitter, have your date night. He goes home, you go home. And like I said, just make sure you vet the person very well. Make sure they are who they say they are.
Okay.
Because that definitely happens.
You guys, the two guys, you guys have a comment on that? Anything to add to what Mika said?
I'll let Jordan go. I would run my mouth a lot.
I mean, I don't have much to add. I say, yeah, take your time getting to know somebody. I mean, especially like figure out what your intentions are and figure out what their intentions are and take your time. I think if you're taking a relationship seriously, then like patience is a good thing. And especially if you have kids, especially if kids will be involved. Yeah, that's a whole nother level. So I do think that it does benefit you in the long run to really get to know someone, vet them, take your time, be patient. Yeah.
The only thing I'll throw in really quick is just the way this question is worded. I don't know if this person meant to do this or not or whatever, but dating another race is not magic. They're people just like people within inside your race are people, and they're going to have flaws. They're going to have gifts. They're going to have everything. You have to find a person. So if something seems suspect, don't look the other way because they're a different skin tone. It's still suspect.
Yeah. And
I agree, because that's the way it's being promoted a lot on some of the channels where the women are promoting interracial relationships for Black women. It's like they've made white males into these like kings or something. I don't know. It's just really bizarre. So it's like from my seat, I don't care what kind of color, I don't care what you are. You need to be run through the gauntlet to make sure that your mind is right and that you have some integrity and things like that. I don't care, just because you're a different race from me, that doesn't give you any kind of pass. I'm still going to run you through all the tests that I normally run. And I just thought that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon.
Yes. And no one should be moving in unless you guys are like engaged, getting ready to get married. At that point, I always recommend getting a residence together because it usually doesn't work out too good when someone moves into your house or you move into their house. Sometimes it's good maybe rent out those residences and just get one together. But like I said, no one should be moving in until you're like and getting engaged and stuff. Just stop doing that. Stop moving in everybody with your children. Doesn't matter who it is.
Okay.
There was sorry, I was going to say there's a question I saw Christopher had on there that I'd like to address if we could. He was asking Jordan and I why we don't date Black women, and somebody else.
I missed it.
Yeah. So some of them aren't highlighting or whatever, but so somebody else already answered this. I have dated Black women. If God forbid, my relationship that I'm in currently that I plan to get married in ends, then I would date a Black woman again. As I said before, kind of my own story, Black women, I never had anything against Black women. I felt like I was supposed to date Black women. So that made me feel like I wanted to date them less, but I still dated Black women plenty. I've had relationships in the past with Black women and would have them in the future. So I'm not dating Black women. I'm just not currently in a relationship with a Black woman.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me, I've only seriously dated one person. It was a long-term relationship, and so I'm open, very open to dating a Black woman. For me, the biggest factor that I look for, I'm Christian, and so like as long as like that aspect of faith is key, then for me, like I'm open to dating.
Anyone.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say anyone. But like,
you don't have a limit on it. It's not like you're excluding Black women. Okay, I got you.
Right.
That's what I meant. Let me clean that up. Okay, here's another question for you. Is it a different experience when you're biracial dating interracially?
Yes.
If you align more with a specific race, do you get weird comments when you choose outside of what your family expects?
I think, well, first of all, my mom doesn't expect anything. I don't know how she could possibly say, whatever I bring home, she could say something like, you did the same thing. Shut up. Anyway, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, your mother is, she sounds like a special lady.
No,
I like
but,
her.
no, but this is something that I kind of, I've thought about the past few years is I am multiracial, but it's not black and white. I'm black and I'm mixed. Those are my two races, right? Because nobody's ever going to confuse me with white. Nobody's ever going to let me identify solely as white, right? So I'm black and I'm mixed. So almost every relationship I'm ever going to be in is going to be some type of interracial relationship. And I don't mean like in a literal sense. I mean on a cultural sense, because dating a black woman is supposedly not interracial for me, right? Because black is what most people will see me as immediately. But with me identifying as mixed and with me having a white mother and, you know, having white family members that I love, and that's blood, that's not just somebody I care for, right? That immediately makes the relationship different than just black on black. It's not the same relationship. It still has interracial components to it because of that. And I think that gets lost sometimes when you're talking about dating interracially versus black love and everything else when it's a mixed family, because they're still mixing in the family. It's just, it happened before me and I'm a product of it. And if you identify that way, as I do, as a mixed individual, then you're still going to have those components to it. So I'll say it definitely does come up, and it also can make some of that, let's say, playful racism or whatever you want to call it come out too, where they talk about your white side and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, if you do something like you mess up a dance step, that's your white side for sure. You know what I'm saying? So like they get at you in different ways with that. And like I said, it can be playful, and it can also, but it also can lead to some other things where they expected you not to be so black because you're mixed or something like that. You know what I mean? So.
Okay, where did I find this question so I can undo it? There we go. Okay. Now, do you guys, that was funny. Do you find that it's a little bit more difficult for you as you get older, or do you think that there's a difference between dating like another brown person, another minority person, than someone white? Is there different challenges there, and have those challenges changed by your age? We know, Jordan, you're the youngest one on the panel, so you might not even have an answer to this question. But you know, it just seems like as people get older, their way of handling themselves might change. And then as you guys all have experience with interracial dating, you know, do you think it would be? Has it been different, white interracial versus non-white?
Oh, you want to go first, Mika?
I'm sorry.
I know that was a long, but basically what I'm asking was kind of a two-part question. Has your dating experience, dating interracially, been different dating a non-white minority person versus dating someone who's white? That's one part. And then do you find that as you've matured, your handling of those differences has changed?
I've only dated white men, like Italian. So I mean, besides black men, I dated a lot of black men when I was younger, and then when I got older in my 30s, I'm like, okay, this isn't working. Let me try something else and open up my options. And so then that's when I started dating other races. I've never dated, someone from of Asian descent or of a different race, so I can't really answer that. But as far as it changing, I mean, I'm married now. I'm happily married, but I don't think I would ever go back. I think I would stay dating other races for me personally.
Okay. What about you, Brandon? You're the veteran around here.
Yeah. It's very different. It's so different that, look, my personal perspective is I will never say I won't date anyone of any race. That's not who I am. But I will say this: if, again, God forbid, this relationship that I'm in currently ends, it'd be difficult for me to go back to dating white women. Just being honest, and the reason for that is because of the experiences I have had and the other experiences that I've seen and everything like that. It doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means it would be difficult. And so when I say that, it is very different dating interracially with a white woman and dating my girlfriend who has the same skin tone as me. Because like I said before, she's experienced racism. She's experienced prejudice. She's experienced all these different things that it's very much easier for us to have that conversation, even though it's not the same because she's not Black, right? So there's there is a level of communication there we can have. And when I dated a Puerto Rican woman, same thing. But, you know, and I didn't tell this story earlier, and I meant to come back to it. There was a white girl I dated before, the last white girl I dated, coincidentally. This might be related, might not be, we'll see. But I had to explain to her why I didn't want to hear her say the N-word. You know what I mean? Like in the way that a lot of white people these days say the N-word. They're not saying the hard R, they're saying the A, you know what I mean? And so when you have those kind of conversations, you're like, that you just are so surreal to you, because you're like, how do I even have to say this? You're like, are you understanding that as a Black person, I don't want to hear you say that? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, those are just conversations I don't have to have with my Persian girlfriend or the Puerto Rican girl or stuff like that. Like, they get it. They understand it, and there's a different level of connection there. So I think there is a lot of differences there. And again, that's one white person. That's not white people, right? So when you date white people, the other thing you get is the looks. If I'm out in public with a white person, I get looks. If I'm out in public with a Puerto Rican or a Persian girl, an Asian girl, Hispanic girl, like whatever, there's no looks. You know what I mean? Like, there's the joke about Will Smith always being against Hispanic women for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, there's just differences when you're dating white, which is what interracial truly is recognized as for a lot of people. And so there's just cultural differences. There's the public differences. There's the familial differences. So it's just very, very different. And then going back to the conversation we kind of had at the beginning, when you're talking about some of the pros of dating outside your race, you're talking about, generally speaking, you're talking about cultural differences. And there's not a ton of cultural difference when you're dating white people compared to dating, again, like my Persian girlfriend now. There's a lot of differences there, and you can learn and grow in those differences compared to dating, interracially with white people, that there's not the same level of differences. You don't necessarily get a lot of cultural growth from it.
Okay.
So.
And our young Mr. Jordan?
Well, I've never been with a white woman before, so I can't explain a difference. But I do want to actually like bring the conversation out more to just like a relationship standpoint, like even just like a friendship standpoint. I remember this conversation I had 2 years ago, right after George Floyd was killed. I was with one of my friends from Washington. She grew up in like rural Washington, and we were having this conversation. And this is a white girl from rural Washington. Her first real experiences like with Black people were when she went to the University of Washington. And she said to me, it wasn't until I got to college that I started thinking about race and started thinking about like the social dynamics that come with race in America. And I have seen, like, because of that conversation, I have entered into further conversations with other white friends of mine, just talking about how they never really thought about the impact of their words or some of their actions or some of the things that they would do or say around other minorities here or people of color here in the US. And so even though I haven't experienced it within, like, I guess, a romantic partnership, I have seen a difference between like interacting with my white friends versus interacting with my friends who, you know, are immigrants or who are Black here in the US. And like, there is kind of this understanding of like, I know what you're going through, right? Like, we have like similar experiences. There's some things that don't need to be said. And some social circles that we'll be in where you'll see like the Black people congregate together and like have a debrief about what went down, because like there are little things that we notice, right? That like if we say it when a white person's around, they may not get it. And so I do, even though I haven't been in that space in a romantic way, like I do see it within like the friendship realm. And
okay, that is an excellent point. So I guess one of the final questions that I have, I was looking for them to say something else. Well, let me get BB. BB's been waiting here so patiently. BB, you can unmute your mic and make your comment.
Hi, Deborah. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say that interracial relationships are actually crucial to girls who are like from other cultures who grew up in the States. Because, you know, like some cultures have requirements what it means to be a woman. And especially for me, I come from a very conservative culture. So dating somebody who's not from my culture is super important when it comes to like co-parenting with somebody, when it comes to gender roles in the house and all that stuff.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
So
they're
you
very
think that
conservative.
is
Yeah,
going to is it going to help your parents loosen the reins somewhat?
yeah. Well, I'm in my 30s right now, but um, we get a lot of like fear mongering. Like we're told like, oh, that person's gonna take your kids away. Um, if they abuse you, the law is gonna take their side, and you know, and whenever a girl dates outside of her culture and something happens to her by the other person, they're always like, "See, I told you not to date other people. Stick with us." So
I
we're
see.
no, they're always the
Yeah.
horror stories. They're always told since we're growing up. So, I mean, domestic violence in our culture is just like, oh, they were fighting, and it's just if a girl like reports it to the police, they're always like, oh, she locked her man up. So it's just leaving all of that stuff. To me, I always plan to date somebody outside my culture because I want to. I want to have like a easy life. I want to have somebody who can take care of the house with me, raise the kids with me. Because in my culture, they think that's the mom's job. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
a lot of girls from other cultures as well. Like they need to consider this as an option. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, no, those are excellent comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I mean,
She
I
was
will
so
say
patient.
with my husband being American and I'm American, we have a lot of similar things. Like we both celebrate Thanksgiving. We celebrate all the same holidays. So like, even though he's white and I'm black, it's still the same holidays. So
Right.
it's not really. I mean, the only thing that's different is I'm cooking soul food. On a lot of
Yeah.
these holidays. As opposed to what he may have grown up in. So.
Girl,
You know,
green bean casserole.
Mhm.
That should be banned from life. That stuff is dreadful. I went to my white friend's house and they had that stuff, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, what are these squiggly things in here? Oh, those are dried onion rings. Nobody really eats that. And they put some of that stuff on my plate. Girl, that was the worst stuff I've ever eaten in my life. I tell you. So you saved him from green bean casserole.
I
That's what you
did.
did.
I did.
Uh, I'll say though, I did want to piggyback off something Jordan said earlier, though, that I think that one of the things that comes with interracial dating in today's society is how revolutionary George Floyd was for some people. I'm going to say something that I hope isn't reductive of George Floyd's situation because that was heinous, and I don't think anybody on the panel would disagree with that. But George Floyd was just another in long line of things that Black people have been paying attention to since they were born, basically.
Right.
But for a lot of people, George Floyd was their eye-opening moment. Like Rodney King wasn't caught on tape, like Emmett Till's photo wasn't in the paper, like all these things that happened, right? I think that's one of the things that you sometimes carry with you in certain relationships that you're having is at what point did they come online as part of the Black experience? You know what I mean? Like, was it 2020? Because that's going to be hard. That's going to be a lot of catching up to you're trying to do, and I'm trying to come with you on that, right? Or is it something that they've been aware of prior to that, and maybe you can take that understanding deeper? Like, I know it shocks me to this day, but there's a lot of people who don't know about Black Wall Street, about what that truly was and how that all went down and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because they don't teach that in schools. And so those are the type of things you really start to see, those cultural knowledge that you have. Like Jordan said, his parents purposely sat him down and taught him about these type of things, right? Because that's where a lot of this stuff is passed down from. Like, I don't know where my mom got the idea from. It's mostly because I imagine she talked to a lot of her Black friends about raising a Black man. But she sat me down and had the conversation about police pulling me over. My white mother had this conversation. And the irony of the whole situation is me, as the Black person in that situation, was telling her she was wrong, that the police weren't going to treat me no type of way or anything like that. That was the naive behavior of a teenager. But those are the type of things I'm talking about. When you're talking about interracial relationships, when you're talking about especially bringing children into the world from that, are you going to be that type of parent? Are you willing to take on the struggle of your child's identity in the sense that you're going to have to teach them about a race you're not a part of, potentially? You know what I mean? And those type of things. So I think that's, for me, is one of the things we were talking about dating outside the race. what is their point? What do they go to when they're talking about civil rights and injustice? Are they talking about, George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or these things or whatever, which again is not a bad thing to do, or are they aware of the long history of these type of things? And I think that really comes to the conversation when you're talking about what type of person you're dating. It's like, have they been down for a while, or are they just coming on board?
Yeah, that always bothered me, because I feel like, especially here in the United States, that's part of what you call white privilege, and they don't have to learn anything about us. We have to learn about their culture because we move in it, we live in it, we work in it, but it's not the reverse. So in any situation, even, I have two white friends. I mean, they are the coolest, but they're like ex-hippies. So they are just very well read, traveled all over the world. And I think they're in their 70s now. But I love being around them because they get it. They're white, but they get it. And so there's none of that awkwardness. We can have all kinds of conversations open about race and, issues in the news and how it impacts the Black community. And in some instances, they know more about it than me. So I'm like, okay, but that they get it. And it's so refreshing and relaxing to be around them, because I don't feel like I'm going to be in the role of having to, represent all Black people. And, because they want to ask you that, what do Black people think about this? How do I said I was going to be good and trying to not and watch my language. But
I'm just glad it wasn't me that did it first.
Sends me to Mars. Don't ask me that. Nobody elected me like the Black representative for everybody. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like I said, like you just hit on that key point for me. Is this something Black people do, or is this something Brandon does? Because Brandon does a lot of stuff that Black people ain't trying to own up to. You know what I'm saying? So don't make me the sponsorship for that, because there's a lot of stuff that's just me, that I'm just doing as a human being, that I got nothing to do with my Blackness. It's just me being weird.
No. You want to add something, Jordan?
Yeah, I do have like a quick story. I was with like this circle of church friends, and there was one young gentleman from Minnesota, actually, and it was like this prayer circle we were having, and I remember specifically, like, I got distracted by words he said. He prayed like, God, this is so overwhelming, because this is in response to George Floyd being killed like maybe a mile from where this guy lived. And he said, God, this is so overwhelming, because this is the first time this has ever happened. And maybe this guy was like 22 years old at the time. Yesterday? Right. And I just like opened my eyes, and I had this moment of like, oh my gosh, like there are people who have like no idea what's going on. And one thing that I want to emphasize, and it may sound bad, but I think it needs to be said, is like Black people of color do not have the responsibility to teach white peers the struggles that you're going through. Like, I think that people in your life should take it upon themselves to educate themselves and to know what's going on in this country. Like I mentioned before at the very beginning of this live stream, there are people that I talk to, like my friend who was saying, like, Jordan, it is exhausting sometimes to explain my experience to a non-Black male. And so I think in entering interracial relationships, especially with people who may not know the Black experience in America, or even your experience in America, like it can be exhausting, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be like a burden to you or a responsibility of yours to have to explain every single thing to someone who's trying to be in a relationship, even just a friendship with you. Like, that person can take it upon themselves to educate themselves. There are plenty of resources out there that they can use to learn. So
I
just
totally
wanted to
agree.
add that. Yeah.
Okay, great point. You got something to add, Mika?
I'll just say my husband, he's very well read. He loves history. he knows a lot more about stuff than I do. Like you say, sometimes he educates me on stuff. I'm like, what's going on in the Middle East? He's like, he tells me, he's like, these people want to be here, and and I just, I never was a history buff because it was their history, right? So, but at the same time, I would say, I do a lot of complaining. I'm like always complaining. This is going on. This is going on. That's going on. He's never once invalidated my feelings or told me to shut up about it or stop complaining about it. Not once. He's always very understanding. And yeah, for me personally, I've never had the issue of him not understanding or even implying that he understands what we've gone through as a people and what I go through just being a Black woman living in a like I told you, we live in a very white area. I mean, I want to live out here, but it's just a totally different dynamic.
Okay. Well, I want to give you guys, this has been absolutely fabulous. I want to give each one of you an opportunity to, tie up any loose ends and your closing words on what someone who maybe is thinking about being in an interracial relationship, kind of how might that be approached? Because I remember earlier when Mika, you were saying how, dudes that are not Black are going to approach you slightly differently.
Yes.
So that might be something you could, tie that loose end up. But I'm going to start with the guys and let them give their closing comments.
I guess the closing comments I have is just if you're interested in dating interracially, do it, but don't look at it as a saving grace from anything. Black men are not monolithic. There are good Black men out there, but that doesn't mean you should break your back trying to find them. So I think it's important that you go and you find whoever is a good partner for you, be whatever skin tone or race they're going to end up being. But if you are going to date interracially, the one thing I will say is you have to have a good, strong sense of self when you do that, because it can be very easy to lose yourself with that. Because there's good interracial relationships where the people build each other up and the partners are very aware of the differences. And then there's what I imagine Candace Owens' relationship is like with her white husband, as she's out here spitting all these white supremacist talking points. You know what I mean? So there are all these different types of things. So you can't just go and say interracial relationship is going to fix it because Black men are dusty. And I'm not saying that some Black men ain't dusty. I'm saying that you have to find non-dusty men, and some of them will be Black, some of them will be non-Black. And that's really what it comes down to. Do not exclude people because they're not Black.
Gotcha. That's such good advice. So they're giving you all kind of props in the chat stream. Get it, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay, little Jordan. He's so cute.
Thank you. So in a lot of the videos that I do, like the street interviews that I do, talking to couples, talking to individuals about relationships, a common theme that comes up in these relationship-specific videos is communication. Communication is key. And I think there are certain things within relationships that facilitate communication, that just make it easier. Like if we grew up in the same neighborhood, if we obviously have the same native tongue, if we, share a similar faith, if we have a similar culture, similar race, like those things make certain conversations easier, right? But I think at the end of the day, as we've all experienced, like relationships are just purely complicated, right?
Yeah.
Like two human beings coming together, it's a complicated thing. And certain similarities can make certain conversations easier. But like as the saying goes, like choose your battles wisely. I think I would say in this instance, like choose your conversations wisely, because no matter what conversations you enter into, there will be complicated conversations. But I think some conversations about differences in culture, differences in race, like those can be very edifying. Those can be very beautiful things. And yeah, I say, go for it. Like I'm a product of a beautiful interracial relationship. Like my parents are still together. They're great people. So shout out to them. And yeah. So
well, they sound like they were great role models for you and your brother. And that the family, the situation that they set up, the support system and the social circle that they placed you in were all people of like mind. So, you were surrounded by a lot of positive people, and it reflects, it shows. Good job. Well, I want to thank you too. Let you guys send me your information. I want where people can find you and follow you. What I want to do is add it to the um into the show description so people can just go there and click. Okay, just send me a quick email after the show and I'll add your stuff into the show description. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to finish up just talking to my girl here and get you. I want to ask you that question.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, like I said, if you want to start doing it, you have to be ready to do it mentally. Be yourself, get out there, start doing different things, whereas people of other races that are out there, talk with them, make new friends online, um, and most of, foremost, vet them because, like I said, it's good and bad of all races. So you definitely want to make sure, you're giving your time to the right person. I always say date multiple people. Dating does not mean having sex with a person. It
Right.
just means you're getting to know them. So, date multiple people. And I always say, may the best man win. Go for the person who treats you the best,
That's
who's
the way I
doing
like to do it.
that
So
you
now
like.
tell me about this approach though. So you were talking about how their approach might be a little different. And I'm thinking, you're used to the very kind of, I don't know, the
Catcalling?
black culture is the approach is very aggressive.
Yes,
And, whereas, and so if a woman is only used to that, you're right. She may not recognize when a guy is feeling her. So that's what I
exactly.
wanted you to talk on.
So, if like say you're in the grocery store, somebody may walk up and say, oh, can I help you, grab that off the shelf, and then they might strike up a conversation with you. That's probably because they're interested. They're not going to be as forward as like a black guy would be. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be like, hey, can I get your number? No, they're not going to come out like that.
Mm,
Most likely they're going to start a conversation with you. And they might not even ask you that first time. Say they're in the store and you see them again, then they might ask you again. But it's like you said, it's definitely less aggressive. For my husband and I, we were friends first. We met, we worked at a similar place. He doesn't work there anymore, but we worked together and we were just friends. So we started off as friends, and then we were actually dating other people. I was dating someone, he was dating someone, and then we both were single for like a year, but we're still working together. And then he's like, hey, would you like to come hang out with me? I'm sure. Let's go on.
oh, he done hit you with the Mac
Ever since
move.
then, we've been together ever since. But like I said, we were friends before. So, you know, go for who's going checking for you. The one thing that made me accept him as a date, because like I said, I was dating other people, it's like he was actually concerned with what was going on in my life and things like that. And I noticed the people I was dating didn't even really care. And it's like, maybe I should give my attention to this person because they seem, a lot more attentive and a lot more caring about what's going on with me, and trying to help me, uh, like I said, problem solving,
Right.
providing and protecting. So, maybe go for who's going for you and see how that works.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mika, for coming
Okay.
back and supporting the show and sharing your vast experience and knowledge on this topic.
All right. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Okay.
All right.
Talk to you later. Okay, everybody. That was our show for today. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something. And I think, I wanted to have this discussion here because I think it's very important for Black women to, feel comfortable in broadening your horizons. Just like everyone on the panel warned you, though, you are going to still be responsible for just as much vetting as you would do for anyone else. Don't think that just because the person's not part of Black culture that they're not going to have some level of dust associated with them. I hate to say it, but I mean, think about the advice letters that we get in. Do you think everybody who writes those letters is Black? The answer to that question is no. Usually they identify themselves as race, but by race, but we take that out because I don't want, unless it's relevant to the letter. We don't really feel like it's necessary. So we take that out. But some of them, at this point, I'd say 60 to 70% of the letters that come in are from people that are not Black. So I just wanted you to understand that. So you thinking that I'm going to get with a man of another race is going to be some kind of magic wand in your life and in your relationship. That's not true. Okay. Because there's dusty men of every ethnicity. So, but I do want, women to experience that. But you got, like Mika said, you got to get yourself ready by broadening your horizons. You can't only eat a certain kind of food. Learn a few words of a different language. You're going to go to a foreign country using, once you can travel again, and take some time to learn the language. Learn something about that culture before you go there, so you don't look like an ignorant American. That's a stereotype that we have all over the world, because people come and you get upset because people don't have French fries and don't speak English. You're in their country. You eat what they eat and you speak their language. Okay. So things like that. I just think, it's great to want to date interracially, but you have to know what you're going to be up against. There's the pros and the cons. We all talked about those tonight. The audience, the panelists rather, were very open with you, took your questions. And if you have more questions or you'd like to reach out to them, I will be putting their contact information in the show description. And so you can just click a link and just go right to them, to their page, and follow them and find them online. Okay. But you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll be here on Tuesday, back for What the Fuck Tuesday, the relationship advice column. If you're not already a follower of this channel, please hit that subscription button on your way out, and you can like the video and share as well. I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Bye-bye.